All right, welcome to the show, Dr. Saad. I think I'm saying it right. If I get it wrong, I think you could correct me on it. You have an incredible resume and reputation. People have seen you on Joe Rogan show. We'll put your credentials in the description section, but I don't want to belabor too much on that. I mean, obviously you're qualified, man. People will know your qualifications by some of the things that you explain. They can make the decision from there. But I really wanted to bring you on because I feel like you have a really good, thorough perspective on what's going on with Islam around the world, the influence of Islam. I know that a lot of people believe, and I don't know if it's right or not, to be quite honest, I don't believe that Judaism or Jews have such a negative influence in America and around the world as the Islamic state, or whatever you can call it, radical Islam. I don't know if it's radical or not, but I want you to just speak to that, because and I want the audience to know, I've never talked to you before. Right now, you were suggested as a guest. I thought you were incredible on Joe Rogan. Didn't watch the whole show. I just watched a couple clips. And so I'm not telling you what to say, but I want you to give me a fair assessment of what you think about the influence of Judaism and Jews, quote unquote, and their influence in America and around the world in comparison to Islam and their influence around the world.
Sounds great. First, thank you so much for having me on. A pleasure to finally meet you, at least meet you. Look, religions are not interchangeable. There are over 10,000 documented religions in the world. They include a lot of similarities, but they include grossly obvious differences. So, for example, in Islam and in Judaism, you're not supposed to eat pork. Whereas in Christianity, it's perfectly reasonable to have a nice prosciutto sandwich. So meaning that the content of religions matter. They're not interchangeable, right? Badminton is a sport, so is MMA fighting, but one of them is much more likely to cause you brain damage than the other, even though both are called sports, right? So let's take, for example, Jainism, which is a religion, a very much of a pacifist religion. The Jains are so keen on not ever harming anything that when they walk on the sidewalk, they actually first sweep the sidewalk, lest they might inadvertently step on an ant. Therefore, if you have a lot of Jains that are coming into your country, you're likely to have a lot more peace, because it is codified in their religion that you have to be peaceful, never mind to human beings, but to ants. All right, so now let's talk about Judaism and Islam. Judaism, by definition, is a non-proselytizing religion, meaning that it is forbidden to go out and try to convert people to your religion. Therefore, this is why today, around the world, we only have 15 million Jews. Around the time of the Holocaust in World War II, there were about 16 million Jews. So Judaism has not increased for obvious reasons. And that is that we're not supposed to try to convince others to join our faith. As a matter of fact, you're supposed to try to dissuade people who want to convert to your religion, because it has to come from a real place of, purity, right? And so on. Islam, on the other hand, is the granddaddy of proselytizing religions. It says that the world will be united under one unifying flag of Allah. Allah is the Arabic word for God, their God, okay? So therefore, that begins to show you that the reason why there is a small Jewish state that is the size of New Jersey, surrounded by 400 million people, each of which those countries at one point was non-Islamic, right? Islam has existed for 1400 years. Each of the countries that today is majority, if not exclusively Islamic, was once fully non-Islamic. So how did it happen? Was it by magic? Was it by love? Was it by kindness that it was spread? Is there a reason why there is a thing called the sword of Islam? Is the sword meant to serve as a back scratch? Or is it because we put the sword to your neck and say, you've got three choices. You either convert, or you die, or you live as a dhimmi. Dhimmi means sort of third-class citizen under Islamic rule. So therefore, there are an infinite number of differences between Judaism and Islam. Yes, they both are monotheistic religions in that, just like Christianity, they believe that there is a singular God, but the details are astoundingly different.
And this is knowing that, and in part, I've heard that online. I've seen videos, and I see how hostile some people are, even in America. I mean, they are advocating for Sharia law. I think in Texas, Governor Abbott banned Sharia law, for any element of Sharia law in the state of Texas. And you see some of them being very hostile, like even in the West Bank. And I'm not saying all of the West Bank, but I know that there used to be in Bethlehem 80% Christian population in Bethlehem. And then when the Palestinians took over and Israel kind of withdrew from that area, now it's only 17%. Around the world, some of the most hostile terrorist organizations seem to come from that extreme religious perspective. But what I want to ask you, Doctor, is it an extremist perspective for Islam to be in its most violent form, or is that the baseline and others are more so extreme by being more peaceful? Meaning that, which one is the baseline? Is the peace the baseline, or is the violence the baseline and the others are acting outside of what the Quran says?
Got it. Look, about 90% of Islam is political Islam, meaning it is a manual for how to conquer the world so that only the one true faith exists, and that is Islam. Only about 10% of Islam is the spiritual part. So it's not as though every single word of the holy books of Islam are all about violence. But if you were to do a content analysis of the contents of the religion, it is very much concerned with how to conquer the world, because there is this one unique supremacist faith, right? And so therefore, as Erdogan, the president of Turkey, said, there is no radical Islam, there is no political Islam, there is only Islam. And countless other Islamic clerics have said the exact same thing. To them, it is offensive when you try to come up with all sorts of qualifiers. It's militant Islam, it's radical Islam, it's extremist Islam. No, there is only Islam. There is no book called militant Islam. There is no book called radical extremist Islam. Now, what there is what I call cafeteria Muslims, right? When you go to a cafeteria, you get to pick and choose which dishes you want to eat, right? So for example, I'm Jewish. It's not allowed in my religion to eat pork or shrimp. I choose, using cafeteria logic, to ignore those parts and eat the pork and eat the shrimp. I'm not practicing soft Judaism. I'm simply ignoring the parts of Judaism that I don't feel like abiding by. It's the exact same principle with Muslims. Most Muslims wake up and they don't say they want to kill all infidels. They just want to go about their daily lives. They're perfectly nice and reasonable. But they're perfectly nice and reasonable not because they went into their book and got that from their book. It's because they're choosing to ignore the endless exhortations to kill and subjugate the infidels. So there's only Islam. There is no Islamism.
That's very interesting. What do you think? What is the allure that America and Europe has to, I guess, allow tons of people from this religious perspective to come into their countries? And in some cases, they're taking over. I mean, people in Europe, and I have never been to Europe and experienced this. I've been to Europe, but I haven't experienced this. So I'm not giving firsthand knowledge on this thing, but I'm just saying it appears that people are complaining about the influence of Islam in Europe. We see in Michigan and other places that it seems to be a takeover. I mean, they're in the middle of the street. They want to build mosques all over. What is the allure? Have we been tricked? Or is it that we believe in the peaceful Islam? Do you think that one day they're going to turn? I mean, should we be afraid? I mean, these are questions that I have about it, because it's kind of weird that out of any religion, one of the most hostile religions in their rhetoric and also in their doctrine is the most accepted and allowed and protected religion in the West.
Right. The question that you just asked is exactly what I seek to offer a solution. in this book, the yellow one, The Parasitic Mind, and in my forthcoming book, Suicidal Empathy. So let me give you a 30,000 foot view of the answer, and then we can drill down into the details. In The Parasitic Mind, I argue that in the same way that human beings and other animals could be parasitized by actual brainworms. Okay, and let me just hang in with me as I try to explain this. So, for example, a wood cricket, an actual cricket, when it is infected with a particular brain parasite called a hairworm, it loses its disdain for water, the wood cricket, and then it merely jumps into water, committing suicide because the hairworm that has zombified its brain needs it to jump into water, commit suicide in order for it to complete its reproductive cycle. So I take this principle and I argue that human beings can not only be parasitized by actual physical brainworms, they could be parasitized by ideological brainworms. And so now I'm going to come in a second to your question. One such brainworm is called cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is an idea that was first spawned on university campuses. Just like all the other idiotic ideas, it takes professors to come up with some of the dumbest garbage. So cultural relativism says it is imperialistic of you to judge how other cultures organize their societies. If another culture wants to cut off the clitorises of 5-year-old girls, who are you, racist, to judge them? Be quiet and accept the fact that they can do what they want. So in The Parasitic Mind, I explain what happens to our cognitive system, our thought processes, when they are zombified by all this nonsense. In my forthcoming book, which I was working on immediately prior to coming for this chat, it's called Suicidal Empathy. There, what I argue is that for me to completely zombify your brain, I need to do two things. I need to zombify your thinking system, but I also need to zombify your emotional system, right? Mm-hmm. So empathy is a beautiful thing. It's a noble virtue. For you and I to have a meaningful conversation, we need to have theory of mind. I need to put myself in your mind. You need to put yourself in mine. So empathy is a beautiful thing as long as it occurs in the right amount, in the right place, to the right targets. Regrettably, the West has decided that the best way for us to make up for being a racist, Islamophobic, transphobic society, right? You need to do a lot of self-flagellation because of the existential guilt of whatever someone did 300 years ago. The best way to demonstrate that we are not racist and transphobe and Islamophobe is to be suicidally empathetic. Therefore, we become the wood cricket that jumps into the water, merrily commits suicide, because thank God, at least it shows that I'm not Islamophobic. So empathy is good, suicidal empathy is bad. And so that explains why when we then see Islam coming for us, we have two choices. Either say, your ideology is inconsistent with our values, but that would make me a mean bigot. So it is much better to be suicidally empathetic, because that way you could decapitate me, but at least I knew that I wasn't bigoted.
I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying this already. You're making me, I gotta read these books, because what you're saying is articulating what I think is happening, but I can't explain what it is. It seems like it is I see it happening to people, right? I mean, it happens on the Islamic front. It happens on the race front here in America, where people are willing to turn a blind eye, get assaulted by a person, then have sympathy for the person who assaulted them, because it makes them feel virtuous. They're manipulating and abusing and mutilating children, and you look them in the eye and say, this is wrong. And they're like, you're mean. I'm mean for trying to protect children for irreversible surgeries is insane. Well, and doctor, I want to talk about this, because this is another, and like, I don't know where you stand on this, but I respect your opinion enough to, even if you disagree with me on this, I respect it, because it will probably make sense. I see that there's a slight brain rotting in wormage that's going on in the minds of people as it relates to Israel for some reason. I think that it's okay to criticize Israel and the war in Gaza. And if people don't like the tactics or whatever, it makes sense to me to have a conversation and critique. But to flat out call it a genocide, to flat out say that the campaign is to murder babies, it seems almost as if it's explaining kind of what you were talking about, is that suicidal empathy to really to no end. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that it's related to the Israeli conflict, or do you think I'm completely missing it?
No, definitely. Orgiastic Jew hatred is a form of parasitic thinking, right? Because it's completely illogical, right? So, and I know that you know this already, but I'm going to put it in the framework of my wood cricket, framework. If I am a queer person, more power to me. That's great. But then if I'm a queer person, would it make more sense for me to support Tel Aviv, which is one of the most queer-friendly cities in the world, right? Short of New York, short of Montreal, short of San Francisco, Tel Aviv probably ranks in the top 5 most socially liberal places for queer people. Or does it make sense if I'm queer to do hashtag Queers for Palestine, where, by the way, they've come up with a really 100% effective conversion therapy. It's a gravity-based conversion therapy. We throw you off the building with your head first, and as your brain splatters on the pavement, you're cured of your queerness. Well, if I am a wood cricket, then I go Queers for Palestine. Let's suppose I'm a feminist. I'm a woman who supports sexual liberation. Should I be for Israeli society where the women are fully sexually emancipated? Or should I be for Gaza society where if one hair sticks out of my hijab or niqab, I might be stoned to death? Well, of course, I am, hashtag for women's of Gaza. And so that's exactly why I use the paradigm of neuroparasitology, because the only thing that could explain such departures from reason is when your mind has literally been zombified by these ideological brain wars. Nothing else could explain this, right? Look, Jews, if you just look at the number of Nobel Prizes, Jews make up an astounding minuscule number of people on earth, yet roughly 25% of Nobel Prizes have been granted to Jews, right? So to your first question, when you asked about Islam versus Judaism, you named the medical advancement, the academic advancement, the philosophical advancement, and there's probably some Jew that's behind it, which, by the way, paradoxically, to your point, is precisely why people hate the Jews so much. Thomas Sowell, whom I presume you know who he is, he's one of my, intellectual idols. When he was asked, what would it take for people to stop hating Jews? He paused and said, they'd have to fail, right? Because there's nothing that upsets me more than to see those obnoxious Jews always succeeding in life, right? And as we know from psychology, there's something called the self-serving bias. The self-serving bias is the following. I attribute successes internally and I attribute failures externally. So if I did well on the exam, well, that's because I'm smart and I studied hard. But if I did poorly on the exam, that's because Dr. Saad is an asshole who's mean, right? So therefore, it's an ego defensive strategy. It allows me to navigate through the world, always attributing my successes to me and failures to the outside world. Well, imagine if now I've got the ultimate explanation for all my failures. You know who it is? It's the Jew. Your wife cheated on you? Well, who controls pornography? It's the Jews. She probably watched porn, and that's what put the idea of her to sleep with the gorgeous Greek gardener. It's raining outside. Who controls the weather? It's the Jew. Your business didn't work out. Who controls banking? It's the Jew. So it becomes a beautiful and elegant way for me to explain all of the failures, both individually and collectively. So I'll give you an example from the Middle East. You probably didn't know this. Did you know that when outside of, there's a place in Egypt called Sharm el-Sheikh, which is in the Red Sea. It's a beautiful tourist area. A few years ago, there was an attack of sharks in that area, which ended up really affecting tourism in that area. Do you know what the Egyptians concluded from all that? It was Zionist sharks. It turns out, by the way, you can just Google this, right? I mean, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. So I'm Jewish, but I didn't know that we are so diabolical that we're able to train sharks to uniquely attack tourists in Egypt so that we could destroy their tourism. But when you are parasitized by Jew hatred, you get Zionist sharks.
Now I know that you explaining, and I'm glad we agree on this, because it's rare to find people that understand this clearly. I don't understand why the hatred, you said is jealousy. People literally think that Jews run America. They literally have every ailment in America is because of the Jews. They did 9/11.
Yep.
They did World War II and World War I. I heard somebody say that they're committing the genocide in Palestine. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't like when somebody say the Jews committed 9/11, which they're just adding to the fact that the Jews are just the most diabolical people to ever exist. And that little country is probably the size of my finger. And Netanyahu came on TV the other day. He was doing a press conference and he showed, I went to Israel and I never realized how small Israel is. He showed a map and you're talking about Syria and Jordan and Egypt and all these big major countries. And then Israel is a slither. It's almost like a canal in between these countries. And the fact that they cannot defeat Israel, the fact that they act as if Israel is literally running the world is bizarre to me. So but maybe you know more than I do about this 9/11 thing. What is the truth behind some of this stuff? Is there any there, or is people just, coming up with old tropes?
Yes, well, they are coming up with old tropes. Look, we were part of the last, we meaning my family, we were part of the last remaining group of Lebanese Jews in Lebanon. So I was born in Lebanon. I grew up in Lebanon. I experienced the Lebanese Civil War. Arabic is my mother tongue. That's why it becomes very difficult to delegitimize me, right? Because I can quote all the stuff for you in Arabic, right? If you say what I say, well, you're just some bigot from the United States. But if I say it, it's going to be harder for you to delegitimize me if Arabic is my mother tongue and I grew up there. So let me reiterate for all your viewers and listeners. Islam is a supremacist religion. It says that the world must be fully and wholly Islamic. Islam is also binary. Let me explain what that means. In Arabic, I'm going to say them in Arabic and then I'm going to translate. There are two camps in the world. There is Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Islam means the house of Islam. Dar al-Harb means the house of war. Why am I saying this? Any land that is currently not under Islamic rule is under the dominion of House of War. So the United States is under the House of War. Any country. So right now, for example, the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, is a collection of 56 Islamic countries. Each of those 56 countries, once upon a time, had zero Islam. But after 1,400 years, we have 56 countries that are Islamic. Now, another important point. Any country, any territory that has ever been under Islamic rule, but then is lost, must be reconquered. You follow? So, for example, when jihadists say, we must reconquer Al-Andalusia. Al-Andalusia is an area in today's Spain. Well, in the olden days, that area was ruled by the Moors, an Islamic conquering people. Well, then Spain, Christian Spain, regained it. But according to Islamic logic, once something becomes Islamic, it could never revert to not being Islamic. So that little land that Netanyahu showed you, that little sliver, that little canal, to the extent that once upon a time it was under Islamic rule, it is an existential affront for those asshole Jews to now be dominating that land. It is against our theological teaching that it should be Jewish. This is why Egypt used to be completely Coptic Christians many hundreds of years ago. Today, it's only 10% Coptic. What happened to the Copts? Iraq used to have a huge Christian community. Now they're no longer there. What happened to Iraqi Christians? What happened to Syrian Christians? Iran used to be non-Islamic. It used to be Zoroastrian and Baha'i. Now it is an Islamic country. So Islam conquers places. The quicker the United States and the West realizes this, the better off we'll all be.
It's crazy to me because I don't know how we fix the PR or change the way we think of it theologically, but it is existential, isn't an existential threat to America to scapegoat Israel instead of focusing on what the real issue could be. I don't think Israel, and there's no indication or sign that Israel or Jewish people are trying to conquer anything. They only have one country. And in America, it doesn't appear that there's a coalition of Jewish people that are saying, we're going to run the government. Openly saying this, we're going to run the government. We want Judaism to be the law of the land. And I have never seen any such thing happening in America or anywhere in the world. But with Islam, we see it happening all the time. It was a young lady that's very intelligent. She literally had the most views out of any person I interviewed, named Elika. And Elika was talking about the scapegoating theology of how these countries are, these people are scapegoating Israel, and therefore people are overlooking the connection between the far right, the far left, and how they're joining together to scapegoat Israel and hate Israel when they should be focusing on, like, for instance, and I don't like to bring up people's names, but there's Tucker Carlson that came on and he did an interview. I don't know, has he ever interviewed you?
He has, yes, both on his TV show and in his long form podcast, but he seems to have taken a slight turn these days.
But back when he interviewed you, he agreed with you, or at least he.
We didn't specifically talk about, Israel and the Jews then. It was a lot more about my scientific work in evolutionary psychology and so on. We talked about, the Canadian wokeness because I'm Canadian. But I would have never predicted that he would have some of the animus that he is exhibiting these days towards Israel.
It's very interesting because I saw him go on a show the other day. He was interviewing someone, and he had made mention that he's okay with giving condolences to the families of Osama bin Laden, and he had also mentioned that he don't think, pretty much saying that he don't think that Hamas is a militant group or a terrorist group. He think that they're a political group or something. He said, and I don't know what is happening, and is there a PR movement to change the thinking? Because I get killed online. Like, people are going to be mad at me for doing this interview, which whatever. but I just don't see the reason for the hatred against Jews. And I don't necessarily think people should hate every single person that's Muslim, but I do think people should be aware of what's happening and what they're saying out of their own mouths and their deliberate takeover all over the world. Essentially, that's what the goal is.
Well, so let me put it this way. Look, you know who Malcolm Gladwell is? Malcolm Gladwell is a best-selling author, who writes these kind of slurpy kind of books, but fine. He came out when the transgender craze was going crazy, very much on the side of it's ridiculous to say something is male or female. It's ridiculous that transgender women can't compete with biological women and so on, right? And then just a few days ago, he suddenly came out and said, yeah, I guess I was cowed by all my progressive friends, mea culpa and so on. Well, of course, he said that now because he realizes that the winds are changing, that it is no longer as cool to call a 6'4" guy who yesterday played for the Baltimore Ravens, but now calls himself Linda to share the bathroom with your daughter. But these parasitic ideas are so alluring that we can actually have debates in the 21st century about what constitutes male or female, right? So until 15 minutes ago, the 117 billion people who've ever existed on Earth seem to be able to completely navigate the conundrum of what constitutes male or female. But once I took women's studies courses at Oberlin College, I learned that I had been transphobic and that some women have 9-inch penises. Well, that exact same logic is what causes people to have Osama bin Laden on tape saying that we are so proud of what we did on 9/11, and you've got 19 guys called Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Hussein, Muhammad, Mahmoud, Muhammad, and the conclusion to all that, it's that those guys are really Mossad agents. They're Jewish. That's why I wrote The Parasitic Mind. That's why I'm writing Suicidal Empathy, because it is a cancer to the human soul, right? What makes us human? It's that we have the capacity to use our prefrontal cortex to think in navigating through reality. But once you are zombified, suddenly I become the biggest threat, whereas Hamas are your freedom fighters.
Can we de-zombify people, if that's an actual term?
Yes.
Because I feel at times, and it's discouraging at times, and I'm being honest, and I've been doing this for, on the line stuff for like 7 years now, and millions of followers, and we got so many thousands, tens of thousands of comments. I think we have 1 billion views on YouTube, so I've been doing it a while, but I am perplexed, and I don't if we can de-zombify people, because I tried to interview Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't know if you saw that interview. I'm not a big interviewing person. You say you didn't?
I did not. I'd like to watch it. Yes.
Yeah, you should check it out, because I'm not a big interviewing person. You're one of the few people that I've ever interviewed. I want to start interviewing more to have these conversations, because I learn a lot, and I think the audience will learn a lot. But I had an opportunity through my girl Jordan, who obviously set this interview up. She got it. She know how to do this. So they said, look, he'll take the interview. And I'm like, I can't turn down an interview with the prime minister. So I went online and I asked my audience, the naysayers and the people who support what I'm saying, what should I ask Benjamin Netanyahu? Now, of course, I'm pro-Israeli. I love Israel. I love Jews. All of my Jewish friends, I love them to death. I'm a normal human being, right? I understand the connection between Israel and America. I understand the partnership. I understand everything. I understand the benefit of us working together. I understand the historical context, the religious context. So I said, let me be fair and ask him these questions. I don't disagree with the war in Gaza that Israel is waging. So I'm not going to chastise him over something I agree with him on, but I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak on behalf of his country and what they're doing or not doing, and let people be the judge. He comes on, I do a 37-minute interview. They told me 30 minutes and they gave me 7 extra minutes. So, wow. and they had bombed, Lebanon had launched bombs into Israel, and they had to go in the shelter before the interview. So they had to delay my interview for an hour. Benjamin Netanyahu still came on to do the interview, even as they were getting bombed. So I do the interview. People, when you see the interview, look at the comment section. When you go on my Instagram, I can imagine. It is the craziest stuff I've ever heard in my life. No one shared a single clip of anything he said. And I asked him about the genocide accusation, his own criminal accusation. They said he's going to prison or whatever. He's a war criminal. The famine, the bombing of the hospital, the bombing of the Christian church in Gaza. I asked him about everything people wanted me to say. I think he gave a reasonable answer to all of them. I couldn't really push back on it because I don't really have any evidence to dispute what he's saying. Can people, because even with the interview, people lost their minds. Do you think people can be recovered, or we will forever have a state where people are completely blinded? There is no antidote. There's no antibiotic we can give them that can get rid of the parasite.
Phenomenal question. Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to watching your chat with Netanyahu. There is good news and bad news. Okay, let me start with the bad news. The bad news is that the capacity for human minds to be parasitized is regrettably an inherent part of the architecture of the human mind. Meaning that 300 years ago, we thought, if we were living in Salem, Massachusetts, that it was perfectly reasonable if we thought that our neighbor was a potential witch to throw her into water. And if she actually swam, that proved that she was a witch, and therefore we must burn her at the stake. But if she drowned, oops, I guess she wasn't a witch. So she died, but at least she died having saved her honor that she's not a witch. And people organize their lives around that parasitic thought. So the weakness and frailties of the human minds are such that there will always be a new brain worm that comes along that leads us down the abyss of being the wood cricket who jumps into water and commits suicide. Now, here's the good news. There is a vaccine against each new generation of parasitic thoughts. The problem is that oftentimes people don't want to come to the vaccine station to receive their mind vaccine, right? So they go, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. So let me give you an example. I shared, have you heard of the Muslim grooming gangs in Britain? Are you familiar with that story? Okay. So, of course, Tommy Robinson has been at the forefront of that. I've been warning about this for decades. I'm glad that now more people are hearing about it, largely because Elon Musk suddenly became aware of it, and he's got the biggest platform in the world. And so at one point, I put up the names of 20 perpetrators in one city. It's a small city called Huddersfield. So they're called the Huddersfield 20, okay? So let me give you a sense of what their names sound like. You ready? Muhammad Ahmad, Ahmad Hussein, Ali Muhammad Mahmoud, Mahmoud Akbar Jihad Muhammad. So I put up those 20 names, and in my usual inimitable sarcasm, I said, I'm not smart enough to be able to identify what is the unifying theme across these 20 names. Could somebody help me out? Well, just like the comments that you received after interviewing Netanyahu, do you want to know what many people wrote to me? What was the unifying theme? It wasn't that they were Muslim. Do you know what it was? You know what was the cause? It was the Jews. You know why? Do you know why? Can you take a guess at why?
I can't even imagine how they.
Oh, get ready. Fasten your seatbelt. Okay, this is going to get good, because it turns out that Britain's immigration policy is actually run behind the scene by Jews, even though that's demonstrably false. But it doesn't. Facts don't matter when I'm a Jew hater, and therefore, when 3 Muhammads gang raped your daughter, the real culprit is Moses. You see the mathematical equation? 3 Muhammad equals Moses. Now, I come on shows like yours precisely because I hold out hope that we could change people's minds. But here's the problem. In addition to most people not willing to listen, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. Here's the second problem, is that most of the silent majority who agrees with you and I are silent. And so what ends up happening, the loud voices, the big monster that's coming is not stopped, because here's what happens. Most people, I receive, I don't know, thousands and thousands of fan emails. Let me tell you what the structure of the email is. You ready? Dear Professor Saad, 4 paragraphs of beautiful compliments. And here's the last sentence. You ready? If you decide to read this letter on your show, please don't mention my name. So I write back to them and I say, dear so-and-so, thank you very much for the nice words, but I couldn't help but notice your last sentence. Do you think that we are in the current problem precisely because of your last sentence? So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, but hopefully interesting way, we can't defeat these parasitic ideas as long as it is only a few people that carry the burden of fighting against the tsunami of evidence against everybody else, while all the cowards sit in the background sending me compliments but never willing to share in the risk, right? I had to take a 2-year leave of absence from my home university in Montreal because it was too threatening, dangerous for me to enter campus, right? I had to have security. In the 21st century, a Canadian professor cannot enter his university. Well, why is that happening? Because most of the people who send me lovely words say, please don't mention that I support you. So if I can't get you to be courageous enough, never mind for you to utter the words, but to just stand next to me and I will utter the words, then we're doomed, my good man.
Oh man, that is the truest thing I've ever heard, and I think it just continues to happen in history, on and on and on. You know, I see people do me like that all the time. You know, on all topics. You know, there's a couple celebrities that send me an inbox and they're like, "Oh, I love everything you do," and I'm like, "Dude, your platform is 10 times the size of mine. Like, if you just shared one post that I did, people will kind of get that it is cool to believe this." And the same thing happens with the Israel thing. Like, there's so many people that inbox me and they write me little comments, but man, I feel like I'm the only one. And I know people who are Zionists, who are whatever they call it, they support Israel or whatever. I know them. They talk to me. They agree with me. They like the post. They will never say any of the things on any of their platforms. They won't say a thing. And it bothers me. I try not to be upset about it because I know people are afraid of backlash, and some people have more to lose than I do because I own my own company. So the only person that can fire me is if I fire myself. And some other people work for other people and they may get fired. So I get that part. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, don't leave me out to dry. Like, can some of y'all at least say something? Can some of y'all stand up for Israel? Because and people think I get paid by the Israeli government, and I'm going to start sending like big influencers that say it. I'm gonna send them a cease and desist, and I'm gonna tell them to have to take their video down. I'm gonna sue them because it's a flat out lie and a defamatory thing to say I'm getting paid to have an opinion. And doctor, the only reason that I have an opinion, or at least because when I went to Israel, I fell in love with Israel. It was a wonderful place. It was, wait till you see the interview too, because I'm gonna tell you this one part that happened in the interview that went viral, and nothing went viral but this part, and I'm gonna tell you in a second. But I went to Israel. I got pictures and videos and stuff, and I was looking at them last night, and I might post a couple of them because people claim that Christians are not welcome in Israel, and you know, people hate them, and we're literally worshiping God in Israel. We're talking about Jesus in Israel on the Sea of Galilee, the Mount of Beatitudes. We had a whole sermon there. We would talk about Jesus everywhere in Israel. I literally got Jesus is Lord in Hebrew tattooed on my arm in Jerusalem. So I could never do this in Arabic in Gaza, anywhere in the Middle East. That arm would be, they'd probably chop that arm off. But this is what went viral out of my whole interview with that Benjamin Netanyahu. I asked him a question about what is the treatment of Christians? From the perspective of the prime minister, how do you feel about Christians? Are they treated properly? Whatever. He goes on to say what he says, that obviously they're not just tolerated, they're celebrated, and Christians are very welcome. They can serve in the Knesset, and they can serve I think they can serve in the Knesset, but they can serve in the military. You know, his church is there. I mean, I was there. So, and then I said, but there was only one incident that happened when I came on a tour. And there was a little kid. He was 3. He had to be 3 or 4. He was barely walking. He was scooting on a little unicorn that his mama was dragging along. Orthodox family. It was just the mama and him. We were letting them pass through a corridor. We would let them walk first, and then we walked through. So, but the kid, he's about 50 feet away from us. He gets off the cart, the little thing, and he go, and he spit. And I laughed at him because I didn't know what he was doing, to be honest. I'm like, he just spit at us. That's funny to me. It was funny. Like, this kid is crazy. And so he gets closer to us because we let them pass. He passed me and he went over to the pastor. And when he passed by the pastor, he went and spit on the pastor's pant leg. And I told Benjamin Netanyahu in the interview, I said, we were there, and the only thing that happened was this thing. And immediately when that kid did that, an adult came and rebuked the kid and said, that's not the way we do this. That's not acceptable. We love you guys. You're always welcome. Like, there's some weirdos that live here, but for the most part, we love you guys. I want you guys to know that. Don't get dissuaded by these idiots. And I made mention, and Netanyahu laughed about it or whatever, but the internet blew up. If you find any interview, any document from my interview, it's that. And people are like, oh, you just got spit on once. Oh, you get spit on and it's okay. This is why Christians aren't accepted. And I almost regret telling the truth about what happened, because people have ran with it as if it's literally indicative of the hatred of Christians. And
yeah. Well, so let me. Well, first, I'm sorry that you faced this even at the hands of a child. It's certainly not a normalized behavior. Look, I navigate through both the Jewish world and the Arabic world. Now, today, more people recognize me, obviously, than say 25 years ago. So a lot of the Muslims who would have been more open with me in the past will now bite their tongues, right? But in the past, before people knew me the way that they do today, when I would speak in Arabic to Muslims, it would usually take one step before we converge on let's kill the Jews, right? So I say, hi, Ahmad, and then the rebuttal is let's kill the Jews, right? So it doesn't take much, okay? Sometimes I don't have to say hi, Ahmad. The salutation is let's kill the Jews, okay? So it is enshrined within the tapestry of Islamic societies to hate all non-Muslims. Now, I've navigated, I'm 60 years old today, so I've hung around with a lot of Jews. My family's Jewish. I have never once, never, not one time, we come from the Middle East, never heard, and we went through some very, very harsh realities. My parents were kidnapped by Fatah and tortured. We escaped execution in Lebanon. We've never, ever said things like, I wish we can get rid of Muslims. I wish we can get rid of Arabs. It's not part of our makeup. Now, does that mean that there aren't, forgive the term, asshole Jews who are racist and bigots? Of course not. There are nice Muslims and mean Muslims, nice Christians, mean Christians, and so on for Jews. But is it something that is codified in daily lives of Jews to hate on Christians? Absolutely not. I've never seen it. Does that mean that you can't find some idiot ultra-Orthodox who is bigoted? Of course you can, because he's a human being. Many human beings have dark hearts. But let's not compare the hatred that Islam will have towards Christians versus whatever reality you faced on that day.
Right. And it was, and I said in the interview, and people play the full context. I say, that was just one, and the little kid, he was a 3-year-old. It was inconsequential to me, to be honest. Every other person had been so excellent. So you had so much of a fun time everywhere we went in Israel. I mean, we were in Tiberias, we went to Netanyahu, we went, to Jerusalem. We stayed there for a couple of days. We went down to the Dead Sea. I mean, we were all over. I can't remember all the places, as I only went, the 2 weeks was just the first time I ever went. And I don't remember a lot of places. I got the pictures of them, but we went everywhere and everybody was nice at the hotel, at the restaurants, at the markets. It was so good that I fell in love. And I was like, I want to go back every year to Israel and just stay here for a while and experience some of the holy sites, but then also enjoy the food. And, we didn't even go to Tel Aviv. And I'm not really a secular type person. I don't enjoy the weirdness of New York. I wouldn't go to a party or nothing, but I didn't experience Tel Aviv, which was probably a more modern area than some of the holy sites. And it's probably more popping and a lot more friendly and people are there. And it's everybody having a good time like you do in New York, probably a bunch of restaurants and just a little bit more fun. And, I loved it, man. And people took that one incident where the little kid did the little spat thing on a pastor with us one time. And that pastor had gone there over 50 times. He had taken a tour of his church 20 times. And he told me he had never been spit on or nothing like that. This is the first time he experienced somebody doing that. And I can see how, because there's thousands of Christians there. It was 200 people with just our tour. There was thousands of other people doing tours and Orthodox and people from different religions. And you're not going to see that in Gaza. You just wouldn't. They wouldn't even let us go to Gaza. It was too dangerous. Like, we were touring. They were like, no, we can't go to Gaza Strip. Like, it's too dangerous. Like, something could happen while you guys are here, and you wouldn't want that.
Well, just for you to know, I'm sure that you probably know these stats. 20% of Israel is non-Jewish, right? Earlier you mentioned the Knesset. Well, Muslim Israelis can serve in the Knesset. Name such a reality. Can I serve as a Jew in Oman or in Saudi Arabia or in Pakistan or in Somalia? Could I go to Mogadishu with a big Star of David? No, of course not. Could I do it in Algeria? Of course I couldn't. So again, it's a complete inversion of reality. It's exactly what Freud called Freudian projection, right? So I project onto you exactly what I do, right? And so I hate the Christians. I'm speaking now if I were a Muslim, but then I will say, look, it's the Jew who really hates. It's the Jews who killed Christ, right? But the reality is, by the way, in the Middle East, what often ends up happening is that all of the religious minorities end up ganging up on the Jews because the other religious minorities want to show that they are just as committed to hating on the Jews. So oftentimes I've been asked, for example, would the Lebanese Christians show any hatred towards the Jews? And the answer that they're expecting is no, the Christians love the Jews. Now, some did, but many were actually as anti-Semitic as the Muslims because they also realized that if they don't show their hatred to the Jews, then Ahmed over there is going to say, hey, what's up with you, Joseph? How come you're not hating the Jew as much as I am? And so that's part of the psychology, by the way, in the Middle East. It's called a dhimmi. A dhimmi is an Arabic word. When you write it in English, it's D-H-I-M-M-I, dhimmi. It's a Quranic term that refers to the Christians and Jews who live under Islamic dominion, right? So the Muslims pat you on the head, they tolerate you as long as you keep quiet. So we will maybe tolerate you, Jew, but don't wear a big Star of David, because if you wear that big Star of David, then you're inciting me, you're upsetting me. So if I kill you, you really deserved it because you were too proud in your Judaism. How many people did you see when you were in Israel wearing the full hijab and so on? Did you see any Jews going around and harassing the Muslim women? No. So Judaism is not a supremacist religion. By the way, when people say the chosen ones, that the Jews are the chosen ones, I actually asked once a rabbi, a very learned rabbi, I said, what is the concept of the chosen one? It does seem kind of a bit arrogant. He said, no. What chosen one means is that God has asked you to live as pious a life as possible so that if other people look at you, they are, emboldened by your piety. In that sense, you're chosen. But there is nothing in Judaism that says, I am better than you because I'm Jewish and you're not. Try to read the Quran and see what they say about the Jews in there.
Yeah, and we have to add this conversation because people will push back and say the Talmud. And now I've never read the Talmud. I studied a little bit of it online. I just trying to get a 30,000 viewpoint of what the Talmud is. And of course, there's inferences or places where there's a critique of Jesus, right? And I learned a little bit that some of the Catholic Church influence kind of curtailed some of the verbiage in the Talmud to remove the name of Jesus and put the man or something like that. So there's references that maybe Jesus, or at least the thought process of the rabbis during a certain dispensation of time, believe that Jesus is in hell, or, there's other things that are there. And when I was reading, I realized there's context to it. There's reasons for the discussions to be had at a time in which it was had, which I don't think that even today, the discussions will be even the same as it was in some places in the Talmud. But we have to, next time we come on an interview, because I know you're a busy man and I got to do my live show, but next time we come on an interview, I want to talk about some of those things because I feel like that you're very versed in all of these aspects. You've been alive long enough, twice as long as me almost. So you've had a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, and I want to pick your brain on a couple of these other things in a very fair way because people think I'm just out here doing stuff. I want to learn. Like, I don't know much about the Talmud as much, except for what I had mentioned with a basic research. I've never read it. But eventually I think we could talk about that in the next.
That'd be great. I'd love to.
Because I really enjoyed this. I mean, we could talk for 5 hours, to be quite honest.
Thank you. That was great.
And so I can imagine that the Joe Rogan thing was like a breeze. But where can people find you, follow you, support you, and also get the book? I need to get both of the books that you had mentioned because I feel like I gained a lot of wisdom by just reading them.
Thank you, sir. So I have a website called GadSaad, GADSAAD.com. You could follow me on X at GadSaad. The books are available everywhere. Suicidal Empathy is not out yet. I'm currently working on it. I'm trying to speed up the timeline because it's really, the concept has gone viral. I could literally do a search online and it's covered in maybe 60 languages, and the book is not even out yet. And so I'm hoping that Suicidal Empathy will be out probably in spring 2026, so maybe in about 6 months, God willing. And yeah, connect with me, send me emails. I can't promise to answer everybody, but what I can promise is I try to read every single email. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your support. Thank you for what you do. And hopefully we can continue it another time.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. God bless you. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.